Welcome to the Reset Series number 1. You're listening to Modeste Schwarz, and this episode is about the Communist Party of China challenging time. Now take China before the proclamation of the People's Republic of China. In terms of its social structure, it's a society pretty much like, say, France in the 18th century, prior to the Great French Revolution. It's a mostly agrarian society with nobility and inherited authoritarian structures. Now, flash forward to January of 2020. At least coastal China has now a social structure comparable to Western Europe of the same month of the same year. This means that the social transformations that happened in Europe over the course of more than 2 centuries, of 8 to 10 human generations, that the same change has happened in China in less than 70 years, which is hardly 3 human generations. So keep in mind this first important conclusion. The speed of social transformation is at least double. Now, in the case of France, the first phase of this transformation process was the one leading from the Great Revolution, 1789, to the stabilization of a republican regime in the 70s of the 19th century. Let's call this process the bourgeois revolution, the essence of which is to get rid of the remnants of the old pre-revolutionary system. In the case of Mao, I think that the same phase happened between the proclamation of the People's Republic of China and the end of the Cultural Revolution led by Mao. So again, China did in less than 30 years what took almost a century to France to complete. Actually, the Chinese version of the process was so fast that even today a big part of the ruling Chinese elite is made out of men old enough to have remembrance of the Cultural Revolution. Now, the next mental experiment I would like you to try with me is the following one. Try and guess the proportion of the ruling elites of today's France who are direct descendants of members of the French elite from the period prior to World War I. It is obviously an existing but tiny fraction of the elites of today's France. While in the case of China, the Red Princes who are ruling today over the People's Republic of China are not simply representatives of lineages reaching back to Mao's time, but due to a very high age average, most of them are actually the very same man who started adult life, if not already their political career, under the rule of Comrade Mao. So here, obviously, you have a total disproportion between the speed of social transformation and the degree of elites turnover. Once you understand this, you also understand most of the policies adopted by Xi Jinping during the last decade. In particular, you understand the most important of those policies, which is the Common Prosperity Policy. Within Common Prosperity, the Communist Party of China intends to duplicate in the backwards Western China the great leap forwards that happened in coastal China during the last 5 decades. But this policy can be completed if and only if most of the Russian energy resources previously allocated to Western Europe are reoriented to be allocated to Western China. This is possible only by making Western Europe recede to the development level which is now observable in Western China. Creating social acceptance for such a program is the essence of the set of policies adopted by oligarchic circles in Western Europe under different names like Green Deal or Great Reset. All the rest of the so-called crisis events that have been magnified by mass media during the last 34 months, to the point that they ended up making out the very fabric of our daily life, are only consequences of this project. Magnified so-called sanitary events and magnified local conflicts in Eastern Europe are only the fabric of the storytelling meant to cover up the operations of the Great Reset/Green Deal, which itself is a consequence of the Common Prosperity Policy adopted by the Communist Party of China under the leadership of Xi Jinping. To synthesize my explanation, the enormity of those 200 years of social development that Western Europeans are supposed to travel back in time is nothing but the shadow of the enormity of the leadership turnover which failed to happen in China.